Hello and welcome. I am Exit Light and this is my channel. Today we're going to be talking about a missing persons case. A woman whose name is Polly Melton. It's unsolved. There's never been a body. And she apparently went missing without a trace. Polly was married to Bob Melton. They were living out their golden years in an Airstream trailer. In the winter, they lived in Jacksonville, Florida. But come April or May of each year, they would hitch their Airstream trailer to the back of their station wagon, and they would head to North Carolina. In North Carolina, they rented a private campsite with 10 other couples. They were a very close-knit community, and if someone wanted to join, they had to be approved by all 10 other couples. No newcomers could join otherwise. The site was located about a half a mile outside of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. At 58 years old, Polly was 20 years younger than Bob. The two had only been married for 6 years. Bob's health was declining. Bob had 2 adult sons from a previous marriage. Polly didn't have any other children, although she had been married twice. In her youth, Polly was tall and very attractive. Her friends thought that she probably had a few boyfriends in her lifetime, but Polly was a private person. She wouldn't discuss that part of her life. As she grew older, she began to struggle with her new body. She weighed 180 pounds and was 5 feet 11 inches, which is not an out-of-shape woman who hikes regularly. But Polly felt badly about her body. She even went on a lettuce and lemon juice diet to try and lose weight. She had high blood pressure, and she suffered from constant nausea. She did take medications for both of those conditions. She also smoked 2 packs of Virginia Slims a day. She wasn't driving in the summer of 1981 because she temporarily lost her driver's license because of her medical issues. Polly also struggled with depression. When her mother died in 1978, Polly fell into a very deep hole. She told her pastor that she just wanted to go to heaven to be with her mom. And during this conversation with the pastor, she made the comments that led him to believe it was possible that she was having an extramarital affair that she also felt very guilty about. In 1979, she was still dealing with depression. She revealed to her pastor that she was addicted to Valium. However, things seemed to be improving by the end of 1981. Her pastor said that she was in a much better place mentally, in his opinion. Polly's father went to visit her and Bob in early September of 1981. He and Polly had grown really close in the last few years since her mother had died. He stated that she seemed quite normal during his visit. Polly was a very social woman, and she enjoyed volunteering at a Presbyterian nutritional center during the times that she lived in North Carolina. For the previous 4 years, she had been serving food to the elderly at the center. At the end of every shift, the volunteers of the center would write down the next day that they would be in. Polly always worked Fridays, but on this particular Thursday, September 24th, Polly did not write down that she'd be returning the following day. And that was, and had been, her habit to do so. The center supervisor later revealed that something else odd happened with Polly that day, at least outside the norm. Polly had never before asked to use the facility's phone. But on her last day, she asked to use the phone not one time, but several times. The supervisor did not hear the conversations, and there were no long-distance charges on the phone bills, so the authorities were unable to trace those phone calls. On Friday, September 25th, 1981, Polly was in her Airstream, and she began cooking spaghetti sauce for her and Bob to eat for dinner that evening. At about 3 o'clock, she met up with 2 of her friends from the campsite, Red and Trula. The three of them often walked together. On that day, they headed up the Deep Creek Trail, which began close to their campgrounds and continued into the national park. About a quarter of a mile inside the park, the trail splits. On the right side is a public picnic area and campground. On the left side of the trail continues into the forest. Cars are not allowed on the left side of the trail, and in fact, there's a large gate which prevents vehicle access. The trail is gravel, it's well maintained, and it is easily considered an easy hike. On that day, the picnic area and the campsite were very busy. There were at least 50 cars in the parking lot. There were many people who were hiking and fishing and camping, riding horseback that day. Polly, Red, and Trula walked for more than a mile past the picnic area and the fork in the trail. Then they stopped at a turnaround point, and Polly smoked a cigarette. The conversation among their friends was normal. In fact, they said that it was lighthearted and fun. Polly seemed great. When they started to walk and turn around to go back to the campsite, Polly picked up her pace. Suddenly, just started walking as quickly as possible, and she put distance between her and her two friends. Red and Trula thought it was kind of funny and smiled about it. They were not sure what was happening, but Red called out, "I wouldn't want to be in a foot race with you, Polly." It was then that Polly looked back and laughed. And it was the last time they'd ever see her. She kept up the pace until she was out of sight. Red and Trula kept expecting to round a bend or top a hill and find Polly. They knew that at the rate she was walking, she was going to have to rest, and she'd be there waiting for them. But she wasn't. They never found her on the trail. The friends thought it was strange, but they weren't particularly worried. They knew that Polly had hiked those trails for 20 years. There's no way she was going to get lost, and clearly she hadn't been hurt, because they hadn't found her on the trail. They arrived back at the campsite at about 4:30, and they went straight to Bob and Polly's trailer. But Polly had not returned. Confused, they began asking everyone else at the campsite, but no one had seen Polly. Bob was elderly and wasn't in the best of health, and he was not physically able to search for his wife. But he did begin calling everyone he could think of to see if they had given Polly a ride. Trula, Red, and two other friends headed back to the park, and they went to the picnic area and the parking lot. They hiked the entire trail again and began asking other hikers if they'd seen a woman matching Polly's description, but nobody had. At 6 p.m., they reported Polly missing to a park ranger. He quickly assembled a search party of 25 people. They began searching the trail and the picnic area. There was a creek that ran parallel to the trail, and that was searched as well. But nobody found any sign of Polly Melton. Polly was terrified of snakes, and her friends and husband were positive that there was no way that she would go off trail. Furthermore, on each side of the trail was thick vegetation, so it would be easily noticed if she had fallen into some of the vegetation or had walked through it. There was nothing disturbed. There were forks along the path, but they were all clearly marked, and like I said before, she had hiked these trails for 20 years. She wasn't going to get lost on a trail. Many of the park rangers knew her well and described her as intelligent and strong. Even they stated that she was very, very familiar with the area, and they didn't believe for 1 minute that she had wandered off and gotten lost. It just didn't seem possible. She knew the area too well. Over the next week, 150 people searched for Polly. There were 9 search dogs brought in, and the trail was closed. One of those dogs alerted on a downed tree near the creek. The handler believes that Polly may have sat and rested on the tree, but none of the other dogs detected her scent. Rangers posted pictures and spoke with many campers, hikers, and fishermen. but there were no signs of Polly ever found. In fact, it was as if she'd never been on the trail at all. Bob Melton was so distressed that he was admitted to the hospital the night Polly went missing. The following year, his sons helped him sell the Airstream, and he moved into a nursing home. Bob's sons refused to speak to the media. One son did comment that his only interest was the impact on his father. According to the Melton's pastor, Bob did later realize that his bottle of Valium was missing from the Airstream. However, Polly's nausea and blood pressure medications had been left untouched. In April of 1982, a check made payable to Polly Melton was cashed. The check was for interest due on a bank certificate. The signature did appear to be Polly's, but the teller could not remember what the person who cashed the check looked like. So, what happened to Polly Melton that day? Did she plan to disappear? And if so, why wouldn't she take her nausea and blood pressure medication? Also, how did she veer off the track? There was no sign that she'd crossed through the bushes. So how would she have met somebody on the trail? And then what? There was no cars. So we may never know what happened to Polly Melton. Thank you for coming to my channel. If you're interested in true crime stories or missing people or paranormal, please go ahead and subscribe to this channel if you'd like, and share the videos with people who are also interested in those topics. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Let all know that I should be making more of these kind of videos. All right. Thank you. Good night.